What's going on, 3DMJers? We are back with the third installment of Peeling Back a Layer, where we take topics that we think we have a good grasp of and dig a little deeper so we can understand the true foundation of the information. So today we're going to be following up on the second episode where I discussed the difference between a caloric deficit and a caloric surplus, and how at the very basic level they're not as different as we think. That sparked a good amount of interest and a couple follow-up questions. So today we're going to talk about, can we actually bulk? And also, can you gain muscle during a cut? As these are two things that kind of became aha moments coming out of the discussion around deficits and surpluses. So, to start, let's go to the board. All right, so today we're going to have a deficit surplus follow-up session. And the first question is, can you gain muscle during a cut? So as a brief follow-up, we're going to kind of rediscuss the difference between a cut and a bulk. And in reality, we go through periods of being in a surplus and a deficit every day that we eat, right? And here might be like your sleeping cycle, so like 8 hours of a deficit, oh my God, and then meal. And this might be a bulk where you have bigger meals and then, more time to process it, so smaller deficit between meals, and then once again you go through a sleeping cycle. And in both cases, the change in body comp is due to the net changes across the days and weeks and months of this. All right, so the first thing we know is that when we're going to be in a surplus, this just means that the net change is a gain in body mass, and here the net change is a loss of body mass. The composition of your body mass in these two is going to be dictated by how well your diet is set up and how well your training is set up. So there's no fundamental reason while during a cut, if you have a really well set up training and the cut itself is set up in a way so that it's predominantly having you lose body fat, that you couldn't gain muscle during a cut. And in fact, this is a pretty normal thing, especially in folks who you see who may start their bodybuilding journey at a very high body fat level. The guys who were not happy with their high body fat composition in high school started training, and you wouldn't know that they had muscle underneath until they finally lost enough body fat, and you go, wow, all that weight training was doing something. And clearly they were cutting for that whole period. They might have lost 50 pounds, and underneath it all, they've got a muscular physique. And remember, it goes back to energy availability. Not just the food in, but also your levels of body fat. That's going to tell your body how much food and energy is available. So someone who is higher in body fat is not going to be in the same kind of deficit, even at the same amount of caloric restriction, because a lean person won't have as much body fat available, while a fat person might. So, yes, you can gain muscle during a cut. It's probably going to be a lot easier if you're higher in body fat or if you're following a very small caloric deficit. However, you probably won't be able to gain as much as if you were in a net surplus where you had a more consistent anabolic environment. And also, the longer you cut, the leaner you get, the harder you cut, the less likely that the net change is going to be a gain in muscle tissue. So, of course, as with anything, it depends. Asking if someone can gain in a cut when they are 20% body fat to start, losing only 0.5% of their body weight per week, and having a great training program, it's very different than asking if a bodybuilder who is 6 weeks out and is extremely lean and dieting very hard and doing a lot of cardio and really feeling terrible because they're very low in body fat is going to be gaining muscle. Two different scenarios, yet they're both considered cuts. All right, the second question is, can we bulk? And if you're thinking, of course, why wouldn't we be able to bulk? And when I say bulk, I mean, can we force feed gains? If we eat more, is that going to incrementally and in a very kind of straight linear fashion increase the amount of muscle mass we put on? And here we have to think about this. First of all, there's the concept of growth potential. A 17-year-old who is new to the weights, a male, is going to have a lot more growth potential than someone who's been training for 20 years and is likely pretty close to their genetic ceiling. So, and that comes to the final point of nutrition is permissive. So what I mean by this is that if you took two people, one person sits on the couch, doesn't train at all, but has a perfect bulking diet, and the other person has a crappy bulking diet, and trains, of course, it's the person training who's going to be getting bigger. Remember, the root cause of our adaptations for training and getting bigger and all that stuff, all the muscular adaptations, is lifting weights. Nutrition permits that growth. So we can't necessarily actually force feed growth. Sitting on the couch and eating steak is not going to make you more muscular, while training does. Now, if you add those two together, perhaps you might get a synergistic effect. But really, all it means is that if you have the appropriate nutritional setup during a bulk, it'll allow maximal gains. And how much you can allow is going to be related to your growth potential. So someone who, for example, I'll use myself as an example. In my first year of training, I put on probably about 25 to 30 pounds. Not all that was muscle, but I made the most dramatic gains in my early career. And this is true of everyone who starts training, because you have a very, very high growth potential because you're a beginner. The quote-unquote noob gains. This just means that you have a low threshold for adaptation, a low threshold for getting bigger, stronger, and all that. So that means, let's say a beginner who can possibly gain, let's say the 17-year-old, a half a pound of muscle per week for a few months perhaps, is going to be able to eat a lot more calories that will lead to muscle growth. That means they can be in a 250, 300 calorie surplus per day and have the majority of that result in muscle growth. So that means if they're in a 500 to 600 calorie surplus, they're gaining 2/3 to half of their size being muscle and related, hydration and other tissues related to that muscle growth, and only a small amount of fat. So when they put on a lot of size while they're overeating, it's like, wow, I'm really force feeding my gains. I'm really bulking. But in reality, it's just because they have the growth potential. You do the same thing in someone who's been training 3 or 4 years, and you just find, damn it, I do these 8-week bulks or 3-month bulks, and I just get fat. And then when you cut down, you find I only gained a pound or two. So bulking doesn't make a whole lot of sense when you're not a young 20s beginner. And in the end, doing so as an intermediate, a woman, or an advanced lifter is probably just going to make you fat. And that's because nutrition is permissive. If you can only gain 2, 3, 4 pounds of muscle in a year of hard training, if you're an intermediate or advanced lifter, how can you expect to put yourself into a large surplus on a week-to-week basis and make gains? And remember, surplus or deficit isn't a thing. It's a combination of our net changes. That's why sometimes we talk about gaintaining or simply focusing on the progress in the weight room. Because remember, that's where the initial start of the adaptation comes from. If you're making progress in the weight room, you're creating the muscular adaptations, and so long as you have a nutrition plan that is permissive relative to your growth potential, you're going to be getting bigger as fast as you can. So for all you intermediate and advanced lifters, don't focus on just trying to put pounds on the scale every week, or you're just going to get a little chubby.